Now, in normal Kofi fashion, I'm a little bit late to the party. Lumix just dropped their brand new GH7, which has a ton of different specs and it's a fully loaded camera, although it is a smaller sensor, but it does have one thing that was incredibly important. Myself and a bunch of other creators actually got on set a couple days ago to shoot our short film No Good Legend. Now, one of the cameras we did use was the ARRI Alexa Mini Lf, but the other camera we used was the GH7, mostly because it's ARRI Log C feature, which you guys have heard about. I'm not going to go really over into the specs today. I want to talk about the experience shooting with the GH7 and how well it plays with a camera like the Mini Lf. We'll just get there. This video is not sponsored by Lumix. I didn't get to keep the GH7. It's back where Lumix is or wherever the camera is, but it is sponsored by Riverside, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be completely fair. I'm going to put all the specs for the GH7 right over here on the screen for this clip because for the most part, I actually don't really know what all of them are. When we were briefed that we were going to use a GH7 as our B and our C camera to the ARRI Alexa Mini. Now, in terms of the setting we used on the GH7, we did shoot in 5.7 open gate to make sure that we could shoot in anamorphic because this camera has anamorphic support. We were shooting at a frame rate of 23.98 or whatever that 24 frames a second is. And we actually didn't use ProRes RAW. We actually shot in ProRes 422, mostly because we actually didn't shoot RAW on the ARRI Alexa either because we were using ProRes 444 in order to still get a really wide color gamut to play around with in post, but at the same time maintain quality. Now, one of the things I want to point out with looking at cameras for your shoot is just because you have all the specs that are inside of your camera doesn't mean you have to use all of them. The GH7 is a very loaded camera. It has a lot of things going for it, but for what we needed something that was simple and something we could use as a second angle for our A camera, which sometimes means you don't have to shoot in ProRes RAW in order to get this to match up, which we'll find out a little bit later in this video. Now, in terms of having a smaller camera on set as your B camera, which for the most part for a lot of you guys should be common practice, the GH7 did a lot of things very, very well. The camera's incredibly small, so it was able to be put in certain positions that you couldn't put an ARRI Alexa on without a lot of rigging. We shot this handheld, we shot it on sticks, and we also shot it on a jib as well. Now, I kind of wish we put it in more compromising decisions because it's a really small camera, but if you have the option to use this as a specialty camera or just a B camera angle for dialogue, this actually goes a long way. Now, we still had to rig out this camera. Now, being a smaller camera that isn't necessarily completely made for video, sometimes the rigging is a little bit annoying, but at the same time, a lot of those pieces are going to be cheaper. We fully rigged this guy out in a Condor blue cage with a new battery plate and some of the accessories that you guys are familiar with. The hard part is because of its DSLR shaped body, getting things on like the wireless transmitter just looks a little bit funny and it makes the rig very tall. However, for the most part, rigging this guy up because of its size is not only cheaper, but it's a little bit easier because there's a lot smaller pieces to deal with. Now, having a smaller camera that's going to be a little bit cheaper and a little bit smaller also means that it's going to be a lot less money to rent. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I can't afford to get 2 or 3 ARRI Alexas on set. In fact, I've never been able to afford 2 or 3 ARRI Alexas on set, let alone even having one. The GH7 is about $2,200 and at its best you could just buy it outright at $2,200, which is almost as much as getting an ARRI Alexa package, or you could actually go and you could rent this from your local rental shop if they have it available, or you can go to things like ShareGrid if you're in the United States. There's a bunch of different ways you can get your hands on this camera. And while keeping all of that in mind, it actually makes your overall production even cheaper. If you don't have the money to get multiples of the same camera as your A camera, getting something that can match that's a lot smaller is obviously going to save you money in the long run. Now, speaking of A and B cameras, we're going to get into some of the footage. Now, there is a couple of observations I'm going to make before I show you these two shots. One, it's incredibly easy for me to figure out which one is which because I was a camera operator. I know which thing I was shooting on, but there's another thing that you have to keep in mind with your A and your B camera, especially for this test. Now, we were shooting the majority of our scenes outside, which means that a lot of our shots were in bright sunlight. Now, we did use an ND filter that was built in on the ARRI Alexa, as well as some one-stop filters to go on the ARRI. However, on the GH7, which doesn't have built-in NDs, we did have to use a couple of ND filters in order to match our exposure. Now, one of the things with ND filters is no matter how true to color they are, there is going to be a little bit of cast. Even on the True Color NDs, which I've reviewed before on this channel by Nisi, they actually sway a little bit more purple to overcome the green because they're opposites of each other to make the image more neutral. Now, the filter that we were using did have a hot mirror on it, which means when we really stop things down to try to keep our aperture a little bit more open, we did get a little bit more saturation in our magenta and in our reds. Now, going into DaVinci Resolve, this is an incredibly easy thing to figure out because it only took me about 4 minutes to get these guys to match up. Now, you might have seen other videos matching the GH7 to the ARRI Alexa Mini Lf or other ARRI cameras, and what you're going to notice is that the GH7 is a little bit more saturated, and based on the filter we were using, especially at a higher stop, it was a little bit more red or magenta, which is a pretty easy fix by just taking down your tint by a couple points, and as well as your saturation, which is what I did to get these two to match. Now, there's other things that go into production to get you a good image. There's going to be things like your lenses, your lighting, your costume design, your set design, and everything else that goes into production. But the fact that the GH7 looks so close to the ARRI Alexa Mini Lf on set with only a couple minor tweaks to adjust for your filters is actually something that a lot of people can get excited about. Also, something to keep in mind between camera manufacturers, even if they are the same ones, you might still get some differences between camera bodies, which is also true even for ARRI cameras. If you are going to be using a multicam situation, one thing that you can use is a gray card or a color checker in order to make sure that all your shots match up. Sometimes things are a little bit more shifted than the other, and with something like a simple white balance and tint adjustment, you can get things right in the place that you need them to. Now, I'd be lying to say I was the only camera operator on set for No Good Legend, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a lifeline here. Connor McCaskill is also another camera operator on set, and what we basically did is we switched back and forth between using the ARRI Alexa Mini Lf and the GH7, where if I was using one, he was using the other. Now, we are going to get into a type of podcast portion of this video, but I do want to take a second to talk about Riverside, who sponsored this video, and also we use it in order to make this happen. With Riverside FM, not only can you use it as a video calling platform, you could also store it onto a cloud service and export in 4K. On top of that, you could live stream not only to one platform, but to many at the same time while simulcasting, which makes it a lot easier in terms of using one device in order to live stream to things like YouTube or Twitch or any other platform that has live streaming, and you only have to worry about one single link. Speaking of actually saving some of those conversations in podcasts, you can actually go into Riverside's back-end editor in order to edit via text or using AI tools to actually have a complete video in a podcast format, and you get to do it a lot quicker. On top of that, they do have things like magic clips, and I love these because I like cutting up different formats of a podcast type episode, but at the same time, it does generate AI in order to not only make titles for you, but it picks out the most interesting parts of your cast in order for you to make short form content to link back into the video. If you guys want to check that out, I'm going to leave a link down in the description down below, but we did use Riverside for this next section, and if you want to hear more about the GH7 and the ARRI Alexa Mini Lf, not just from me, well, you can stay around and check out the rest of this video. Connor, what were your impressions on using the GH7 and the ARRI Alexa Mini Lf?
Much like you, I hadn't touched either of the two cameras, so that definitely was interesting. Also, we knew nothing about the GH7 going into it other than the fact that it shot ARRI Log C3, which is pretty cool. So no experience on either camera. And honestly, from what I was experiencing, obviously with the GH7, we had to do some special rigging to make the mirrorless camera work in a production environment. So that definitely was a bit goofy, whereas the Alexa is obviously a camera that's made for this exact scenario, right? So that was something to consider. But to my surprise, the GH7 held up quite well to the Alexa, especially as you messed around briefly with some of the grading. They looked honestly pretty similar. Is that the question?
Yeah, that was pretty much like the experience.
Okay.
And it's funny because like I think there was one point we were on comms, and I think it was me and Brady talking to each other. I think you were setting something up, and I was just looking at the monitor, and I'm like, we're going to have to lie to people about this. Like, we can't tell them this is a Micro Four Thirds camera, let alone one that's matching with an ARRI. Like, it felt weird how good it was, but it held up super well. It was surprising. And I mean, obviously, like your set design, your lighting, costume, and all that stuff is going to play a gigantic role. But it's nice to know that like the Micro Four Thirds sensor at its best is an objectively nice camera to use when you have other things dialed in. Or sorry, at its worst, it's a really nice $2,200 camera with great image quality and a brand new color science. At its best, it's a $2,000 ARRI Alexa B cam.
Right. And I think that's really the takeaway with it. It's like if you put in the same care as we did with the Alexa as you do in this GH7, it's going to be able to hold its own. I mean, really, because ARRI went in and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, they basically set up their ARRI Log C so that at every ISO, the logarithmic curve is the same between the Alexa LF and the GH7, right? So essentially, you're getting the same output, the same color, the same performance, save for dynamic range. You are just straight up, I think it's 2 stops. You're losing 2 stops of dynamic range with the GH7 compared to the Alexa Mini LF. But again, if you're controlling the lighting and you're controlling everything, that's not really technically a factor. Now, the biggest hiccup that the GH7 is going to have with the Alexa LF is just micro four thirds versus full frame.
Which is like, and that's the thing too. Like, I don't think this isn't an ARRI Alexa killer. It's not a Super 35 killer either. It's not a camera killer. It's just an objectively nice addition to an already existing format that a lot of people like. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't going to be some pitfalls of having a micro four thirds sensor. Like, a smaller sensor means that some of the imperfections that you might have on set might be highlighted. For example, if you go into low light, it's not just a smaller sensor, but like not as good light gathering, but it's also the sensor crops in, or like it might just not look as good. You know what I mean? Where on a micro four thirds, if you need a lot of light, it's a smaller sensor and it does well with a lot of light, or it just does well in controlled environments, which you should probably treat any camera at that cinema level at anyways. Like, I wouldn't say go and take your full frame FX6 and go running around in pitch darkness and expecting a clean image. It can do 12,800, but it's not, it's still a little noisy. Like, it doesn't look pristine at 12,800. Similarly, if you're going to take a GH7 and put it in a situation you put a cinema camera in, the chances are and the expectation should be that you're still using light on your sets, even in low light. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. The trick to low light is using light.
Yeah.
To actually make it look correct, because you don't want to crank your ISO, even though that feels like the right thing to do. But really, the right thing to do is keep it at your base and then just light around it to still make it look dark, but also not look bad. I think actually one of the weird things is that the micro four thirds sensor, as much as it can be a hindrance, like if you want to get a super wide shot, well, sorry, you're dealing with the 2x zoom. That's just how it is. And that's why we use the Alexa a lot of times as our wide shot, while you, like, for instance, the second day when I was operating the Alexa, getting all the wides, putting all the three people in one frame, you were grabbing all the tight shots with the micro four thirds GH7, but it worked really great for that. But there were a few times where we had the tightest lens we had, which was the 138 Atlas anamorphic, and we're like, oh, we need it to be just a little bit tighter on the Alexa. And instead of using diopters, we were just like, well, we'll just put it on the GH7 and boom, there you go. We got a tighter shot. So even though sometimes it's a downside, it can also be a positive if you work with it in the scenario you're in.
I think what ended up happening, and I mean, I guess it might be somewhat of YouTube's fault, is that we've kind of made everything not full frames the devil. Like, you remember like the Water Boy, Bobby Boucher's mom? Don't go near micro four thirds, that's the devil. Like, I think we've kind of done that in a couple of ways, where anything less than that, we've almost been, I wouldn't say brainwashed is the right word, but we've been conditioned to believe that, especially when full frame cameras got cheaper, because there are full frame $2,200 cameras, that like that should
full
be the
frame
way to go.
$1,500 cameras now.
Yeah,
don't tell anyone.
We're not going to talk about that now. And it might also be from the same might be from the same brand as this GH7.
Yeah, it could be.
But what's cool about that is that they didn't just like it's not even the sensor size that makes this camera something that's well received, because it was surprisingly well received. Like, I was kind of curious because we were on set during the embargo release. Like, we were shooting while people were dropping videos on YouTube. And we didn't get to see what the reception was, but there was like, it was really, really positive. And I think it's some of the other things outside of the ARRI Alexa color science and stuff that's in it, which unfortunately we didn't get a chance to try, right? Like, we didn't shoot in native ProRes. We didn't shoot in ProRes RAW. Actually, no, sorry. We shot in native ProRes. We didn't shoot ProRes RAW. We weren't using a lot of the frame rates, and we weren't like playing around with like the boosted dynamic range or the rolling shutter thing, whatever that the features are, or real time. Like, some of those features we missed out on. But I was also, like I kind of said earlier in this video, sometimes when you get a camera that's going to be like your B or your special camera, the list of the stuff you have to check off is a little bit smaller. We're like, we just wanted to know, hey, does it have ARRI color science? Can we shoot at the same 23.98? Are we going to have a hard time rigging this thing? Like, those were like that would have been enough for us to be like,
autofocus didn't matter.
We didn't have
although I guess stabilization could matter, because you can do, I think, like, it's funny is I still don't know that much about the GH7 after using it, like, because we barely, I don't know this. I just found out on the show because we went to Cine Gear afterwards. Because I was looking at it and I was like, oh wait, it has like the flip screen that's like flips all the way around, but it also does the tilt action. I was like, oh, I had no idea, because it was crammed in this whole rig thing, so I didn't get a good chance to look at it. I was going somewhere with that, and I got distracted.
It was the idea that, like, when you're camera opping, the context of your film matters more than the spec sheet of the camera. We're like, I wouldn't have like the other things didn't matter to me the entire time we were shooting. I was kind of just like, oh, cool, like that's a thing, but it has
Yeah.
like ProRes RAW has nothing to do with me in the situation. We shot ProRes like 422,
Yeah, I think
and
we did.
it's still matched up with the ARRI Alexa. So like on one end, those things are really nice, but on another end, I'm like, if you don't need it, then like get it for all the other boxes it checks off, right? And even though it's micro four thirds, it still does well, which is still a talking point that when we use the ARRI Alexa beside the GH7 was something that we almost felt like I felt like we were doing something right or wrong, that they were that close together.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think what this camera is doing is it's kind of shaking up us a little bit, and because we as YouTube people, as tech people, we do get. I'm definitely guilty of getting caught up in the spec sheet, but at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
like, how can this tool serve you? And honestly, I feel like this tool, as we've discovered, is like, okay, I see the perfect world where your budget is, I can't afford three, Alexa Mini LFs, but I can afford one to rent, and then I'll just purchase two GH7s to run as my B and C cameras, right? And like that little combo package, that's going to cover you for a lot of things that you're needing to film. When in regards to when you need to shoot ARRI.
Yeah, I think we were kind of on the same page there too. I'm like, yeah, this might not be a camera that I'll like sell all my stuff and get the GH7, but
Mhm.
like if I'm too broke to rent an ARRI camera, which I am, and I either want something that just looks really nice, or if I'm brought onto a set where they have one, production becomes that much cheaper that you don't have to scrounge around for three ARRI cameras at the same time.
Yeah, because guys, it's not just the cost to rent the body. The thing about the Alexa is that it takes a lot of things to get it functional, and all
And a
these
lot of
things cost
people.
money and a lot of people.
Yep.
And so, if you're, that's something that you have to consider. Now, it's definitely the correct thing to do. There's a reason why the Alexa is, or ARRI is industry standard, right? And every movie that you love, more or less, has been shot with an ARRI camera. There's a reason. That being said, depending on what you're doing, that might not be the answer for you. You aren't always shooting a feature film, or a blockbuster hit. You're shooting whatever, a commercial or something that you don't always need the absolute most. This
Yeah.
is a good option.
You also might not have budget for three ACs all day, which like shout out to those
Mhm.
guys. Like I don't think we would have been able to run the setup we were without having a first to
No
set.
way.
We had one first 2 seconds,
Yep.
and they stole Gabe. So
Yeah.
we had a whole camera department, which is the very big difference between having like an ARRI Alexa and having like a GH7. You could solo operate a GH7 and save a little bit of money on what you need for assistance, where the Mini LF, we can't do things if they're not there. Like I can't
Mhm.
take that out on my own and try to like handheld bandit my way through life, because I'll break my back and I might break the camera even more.
Yeah. Well, you could, but it's ill advised.
Yeah, I was told. Adam definitely told me like not to do it, not to play around with
Well,
that.
I would trust him. He was excellent at his job. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, that he was super wild. And I think the only other thing I'm thinking of right now is the fact that the GH7 is a warning shot, because
Mm,
like just looking at how Panasonic is doing things, they released the S5 2 and the S5 2X last year, and they
right.
said, hey, you know what? We're going to give you open gate, full frame, 6K, all that other stuff under $2,000. You have the S9
Crazy.
for better or for worse. They said we're going to give you a compact, fun camera for like $1,500. It'll probably go on sale in a couple months because that's how Panasonic does things.
Yep.
$1,500 might be 11, 12.99 later on, but the fact that you get an open gate, full, you get all those things. Super big,
Yep.
super great value. Now you got the GH7. We're going to throw the whole castle at you. You want the real time LUT, take it. You want ProRes RAW internal, take it. You want 32-bit
Mhm.
float, take it. Just everything. $2,200. It also, in Panasonic fashion, will go on soon. The only other camera that's missing is the S1H2. I think there's writing on the wall here in terms of what they're doing. And if they're
Yeah.
taking a page out of Sony's book and porting over some technologies into their newer stuff, if the GH7 does as well as I think it's going to, I am a little bit scared of what an S1H Mark II would look like, or a BS1H Mark II, which would be
Mhm.
what you would expect at S1H2 sensor in a box style camera that's more riggable, unlike the GH7, because it is still that DSLR body, which it has its own pluses and minuses to having. But I think this is Lumix kind of almost like setting off a flare. They're like, hey, just so you know, we're here. we'll put this in Micro Four Thirds, and we're not afraid to put into something else. And I don't think we're done releasing cameras yet.
No, I don't think they are either. And honestly, you know, call us a shill or whatever you want, but it's like shout out to Lumix because I love that they understood the industry, right? They're looking at the thing is like Canon has over 50% share, and then Sony has the next largest point. Might be Fujifilm and then Lumix, right? Or Nikon, then
I think
Lumix.
it's Nikon.
Anyways, they're low down on the totem pole. So they were looking at that and they were like, okay, what are the things that we are good at? What are the things that our audience has liked in the past? And they are totally willing to listen to feedback. And so I think that this is them saying, okay, all you guys go and do that stuff over there. That's great. You guys are crushing it. Like, I don't think they're throwing shade by any means, but they're like, we're going to try something over here.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the Alexa C-Log 3 is. And honestly, if they're making moves like this, I see a world where Lumix really starts to take a lot of the camera market share.
I think they're going to be I think there's going to be a particular user for them that are more people than we think. Because I didn't think there was as many Micro Four Thirds people until we posted the GH7 content. Like until I posted stories, I didn't realize there was that many people that love Micro Four Thirds. At first, I'm like, it's a dying mount. It's not going anywhere. Whatever. We don't care. And then people were coming out of the woodworks on like, they're like, I have a GH5 and I've had one for years. And I'm like, oh, y'all are really still like, there's full frame cameras exist. You can get one. It's okay. And then you realize you're like, no, they swear by it, right?
I was gonna say, I know that there's a lot of people who swear by Micro Four Thirds simply because the lenses are smaller and they like that compact rig. I know that the GH5, GH5S, and I don't know about the GH6, but at least those two were wildly popular cameras at the time. Because again, Lumix has the mentality of just give you everything. I think the GH7 definitely, the GH6, I feel like, no offense to Lumix, it did feel a little more like a miss, but the 7 is them just like, okay, here's everything again, like the GH5. We listened. We understand that the GH6 maybe wasn't everything you guys needed to upgrade. Hopefully this is. And I don't know. I think it's amazing.
I think it's cool. And I think what's also super smart, which I don't know if you've noticed this, is I feel like we're almost in a weird Game of Thrones of cameras where brands are partnering up to start releasing things, but not hurting the brand at the same time. Because if ARRI wanted to make a B camera to the ARRI Alexa, they could. But in their mind, like they sell $100,000 cameras. So what am I going to do is I'm going to partner with the guy that's already making the $2,000 cameras. I'm not going to hurt my brand, but I'll just give you my technology. And then I'm sure there's some sort of shaking of hands to license that out where I never have to hurt my brand on selling $80,000 to $100,000 cameras, and you get something that'll make your consumers happy. You're starting to see a little bit like Nikon bought Red. Canon's coming out with fairly priced cameras, which is new for me. Sony has just been sitting back quietly waiting for I don't know what they're waiting for. I feel like they have something big, but they're just like, I'm going to just chill out and wait for you guys to do the rest. Like all of these brands are either partnering up with each other, buying each other. Another camera company that like people kind of forget about, DJI. And they own Hasselblad. If they want to start coming out with like Hasselblad quality lenses and they decide like, hey, let's chop off the gimbal on the Ronin 4D and just make it a Ronin 1D, whatever you want to call it. It's an interchangeable mount lens that's a cinema camera that was already a great cinema camera despite the gimbal part that also has Hasselblad glass because we own the company. Now you're starting to see a lot of these, like there's a weird like pairing up of brands, which is kind of cool. And I think the GH7 is just one of those. I think it's the first step of like what you're going to see with like bigger cameras and smaller camera companies starting to fuse together, or 100%. Photo first and video first.
Yeah, Sony, are they still partnered up with Zeiss or no?
I don't know. I think not though. I don't think so anymore.
Because I think that would I think you're right, but because otherwise that would have just left Canon out on the whole teaming up thing. Which they need to figure that.
Canon has 50% market share. They don't need to team up with that. They need to team up with themselves and release more cameras.
Yeah, they do. No, they need to release more lenses and let third-party companies do that. That's what they need to do.
That too. I feel like that was I understand where that decision came from, but I also can say that it was not a good decision in the long run.
Yeah, I think in the long run that hurt them. I think that's why I switched to Sony. I thought that Canon is like, yeah, their cameras are okay, but I just can't get any lenses. They're so expensive.
Yeah, or if you get a lens, it's your life savings. And they started off with the L mounts too. But I think we're in a cool place. I think on one end we're in like a camera singularity where like nothing's bad and everything's good. But then what's happening now is cameras are so good that they're getting super specific, and I love
Yeah.
that. Like, I love the idea. Like, I don't know, I might be a crazy person, but I love the idea of like, hopefully people watch a lot of these gear videos and they look at it as like a point of finding information rather
Mhm.
than go buy this because someone put a video on launch day. Um, I hope what ends up happening is that everybody in a room has like their own different camera that kind of speaks to their personality, because now these brands are giving you the ability to make choices based on what suits you as an individual. Because
Yeah.
by the end of this year, we're probably going to have ENG styled box style cameras from every brand, and every different shooter gets to pick which one it is. Because now
Sure.
no one's not making a box style camera. I I would be so surprised if we didn't see a box S1H2.
Do you think Sony's going to make one?
The FX6 kind of was a box to begin with. They just need to put
I
a
guess that's fair.
they just need an audio jack on the body. That was it. Like they could,
Yeah, and I guess the FX6 exists as well. I don't know what I'm thinking.
yeah. So like the FX6,
Yeah.
the Pixis, the
Yep.
C400, the maybe Panasonic brings back their Evo 1 or the Eva 1. I don't know what it's called, but they have like a kind of like almost boxy rectangular-ish style camera
Yeah.
that's a cinema camera.
Nikon just bought Red, so
Yeah,
good for them.
so you know what I mean? Like those Reds might be Nikons or whatever the case is, or maybe Red releases something else in the more consumer market. Those things are available now, and they're all, when you line them all up beside each other, they're all so different,
Mhm.
and they're different price, they're different mounts, they're different specs, where people get to kind of pick and choose what is important to them. And I think the GH7 is just another one of those things. Now, considering all of those things, considering the hype, because I do think it's real for this camera, am I going to switch my stuff from the Sony and the other full frame system over to a GH7? No. One of the things I could appreciate is that a sensor and a camera company has done a good job with one of their products, and I'm lucky enough to test it, but at the same time, that doesn't mean I have to jump ship and sell everything, despite some people thinking that I switched to everything. If you are somebody that needs a specialty camera to match alongside the ARRI Alexa Mini Lf or any other ARRI camera, or you just want a camera that looks objectively good, because on its own and in a vacuum with most people that might not even interact with an ARRI camera on set, this camera produces a really good image quality, then this might be something for you. Now, all 37 of you might still have Micro Four Thirds, but from what I'm starting to realize from putting up a little bit more Panasonic content is that there's a lot more people that were on the GH series of camera where this actually is a gigantic upgrade versus something you might have had before. At the worst of the GH7, it's a camera that has great image quality, a small sensor with cheap lenses, and it just kind of continues on the GH line of cameras. At the best of this thing, that it's a $2,200 camera that ARRI actually doesn't have to make. That being said, that's the end of this video, and if you guys want to see a little bit more about this shoot, I'm actually going to leave how we prepped our camera for this shoot over here, and if you want to meet the team, the camera crew that we actually had for production, I'm going to leave that down over here as soon as it's up. That being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.